At the economic outlook for India, right? The first thing is that what did happen was that the government announced a 10.5% of GDP, 21 lakh crore of an Atmanirbhar program, but at a very minimal cost of 0.8%. They adopted a number of measures which use the word jugaad, as you may recollect from my last webinar. And these are the kind of steps that the government has taken in terms of NREGA, in terms of support to cash flow starved businesses, and Kisan credit cards and other things for the agricultural sector. So how effective has been this relief package? So here, if you see on the left-hand side, we have listed out some of the measures, and the right-hand side, what is the progress on those measures, right? So for example, 3 lakh crores, 3 trillion means 3 lakh crores of collateral-free loans were given to MSMEs, permitted. About 40% have been sanctioned and 21% has been disbursed. So some progress, but not yet fully done. Same with the 45,000 crore partial credit guarantee scheme for non-banking finance companies. So you have now banks approving portfolio purchase of 31% and another 13% are in the negotiation stage. So pretty much 44% is done. 30,000 crores of working capital funding for farmers through NABARD, 83% has been disbursed. So clearly the farming sector has received the money quickly, right? And you then take housing finance companies and all who have got a special 30,000 crore liquidity scheme, about 33% has been received, the rest are under progress. And in terms of tax measures, the government has actually released 62,000 crores of tax refunds. So that's another way of providing money into the economy. So as you can see, this is a job partially done. There is still some more of the relief package to do, but there is progress, right? So that's with that in mind, right? Our lockdowns also have proved successful and we have moved steadily to unlock 1, 2, and 3. Yes, the COVID virus is coming up in new places, but by and large, I would say that we've done a fairly successful job of containing it, especially from certain segments of the country, such as rural India. So as you can see, the red are the containment zones are largely in the urban areas and the green is the rural India. So rural India has got back into business, right? With that in mind, right? Let's look at it as where are there green shoots visible and if so, what are they? So the first is, like I said, rural India is back in business. So from that perspective, as you can see, India has seen a sharp jump in its Kharif sowing. And record Rabi procurement was also there. So if you now look at the data, this tells you how Kharif sowing is progressing well, much better than last season, right? If you see week on week, right from 5th June, there has been a steady increase in the percentage of actual area sown. Then if you see percentage of Kharif as a proportion of the normal area sown, again, it's upwards of 60 to 70%, right? The other thing on rural India that you can see as a recovery stage is the registration of all motor vehicles. So the light blue line tells you what it was last year, and the blue line tells you that this year during the lockdown it crashed completely, and now it's begun to recover. So I think it's a very important point to bear in mind that it's rural India which is driving this. It's entry-level cars, it's two-wheelers, it's tractors, right? So the other thing is that government is actually spending a lot of money to reduce the drag. So you can see here the government receipts versus expenditure in the fiscal deficit. The government is actually increasing its expenditure. And if you look at it, against last year's 4.6% fiscal deficit, the first few months of this year, they're already running at 6%. So government has clearly also expanded its balance sheet to support the economy. And as a result of which, some of the payment, if you recollect, was a 40,000 crore increased allocation to NREGA. So these are the migrants who have gone from urban back to rural, and the government is providing gainful employment to them. As you know, the NREGA scheme says 100 rupees per day for 100 days in a year. So that has resulted in the job demand going up 40% YOY. So as a result today, in India, despite that fall, we are seeing that both urban and rural employment are back to the levels they were pre the lockdown and the crisis. So you can see there, 8th March, whatever was the level of unemployment, we are back at that level, largely due to rural India coming back on track. So unemployment has recovered, which is great news from our economic perspective, right? Then you take urban employment is there, but you take some other indicators, air traffic, car sales, Google's mobility report, petrol consumption, NPCI, National Payment Commission of India, financial trans. See, can you see the V shape clearly forming in lots of segments, right? And if you look at it, right, the V shape, you should see in mind that I've written the various indicators here, and I've showed you 3 data in each set, which is May month, June month, and then July last week latest. So as you can see in each one of these, they are all negative, but they are less negative than before. So when we say V-shaped recovery, please remember that a lesser negative is also a V. Only things which are actually positive are television ads on this slide, and in the next slide are bank credit and bank deposit. All other things are still negative, but they are less negative than the previous month and the previous month. So the V is forming, but we are not yet in a growth situation. So kindly bear that caution in mind in terms of the word V. V is if from minus 30% goes to minus 20% is also a V-shaped recovery. The recovery is on track, and if this sustains, you will come into positive territory, right? And this again is a summary in a color form because it's easier to understand that from February, March, April, May, June, as you can see in April, everything was in red. So what does it mean? Red means in the bottom 10% of the growth rate and green means in the top 10%. So as you can see, April was the worst month. May is slightly improved in color. June was yellow and green with only one credit growth being red. And in July now, you have no reds. You have only greens and yellows and light greens, which means that the recovery is well on track, right? To that extent, right? Some other specific things which I want to show you were the interstate and intrastate e-way bill. As you know, government is now procuring only through e-way bill. So government's procurement, which also dropped in the month of April, both interstate and interstate have shown a V-shaped recovery, and daily electricity consumption. Yes, it goes up through spikes, but the overall trend is of a V-shaped recovery, right? And TV ads index, I showed you the data, I'm showing you the graph to picturize how the V is forming. But as you can see, there is a slight flattening at the end. So while the immediate bounce back, a relief rally after the lockdown and the unlock, you're opening up, there is immediately a relief to go and do the economy to really come back to normal. You'll have to give it a little more time, right? So this is again showing you the traffic congestion is picking up, right? Electronic toll collection at highways is showing a V-shaped recovery. Railway goods earning data, again the same kind of a thing in terms of April, May, June until 20th July. As you can see everywhere, the negatives are becoming less negatives, right? And finally, to summarize, we have come to what is called as the Nomura's Business Resumption Index. So as you can see, if you use 100 as a base for the normal economy, it had dropped to 68 in the month of March before the lockdown. The lockdown further brought it down to 45, and then as you unlock, you're coming gradually back, you've reached 70, which is well ahead of what it was pre-lockdown. But to come back to the original 100, you have to be patient and wait for a time. So the other thing which is improving is the COVID trajectory is showing some sign of improvement, right? The doubling of cases. As you can see, that is increasing in number of days to double, which means that though India today has the highest number of cases followed by US and Brazil in absolute number, we are actually in a easing trend, right? And the next one is the fatality rate. So again, there is some sign of improvement in the fatality rate, which had peaked and then it is dropping. So as a result of this, right, there is a expectation that the short to medium term itself, markets are expecting a V-shaped recovery. So this is again to demonstrate how the shape of the V looks. And in actual data terms, as I already showed you, from a minus 4.5%, it's likely to go to a plus 6% in the next calendar year. So that recovery is in fact better than the emerging economies and the world. So along with China, we are the two countries that are going to lead the recovery of the world. And as I said, this delta that we are going to show, in fact, is going to be even better than what China showed, because China is only a plus 1 to plus 8.2. We are actually going to go from minus 4.5 to a plus 6, right? So from this perspective, immediate next year recovery is already there. The markets are factoring in that. But before we look into that markets, I'd like to show you one more thing, that many FIIs who invest in our country are investing for the medium to long term. So in discussing the Indian economy, we'll be amiss if we do not look at the long-term implications for the Indian economy. So let me now look at the medium to long term. So in the long-term economic outlook, right, the China opportunity stares us in the face because India has strong structural advantage compared to China. What do I mean by this? China's red line, which is from 2017 onwards, its labor supply has started declining because of the one family, one child policy. India is still on a rising trend, and our decline starts only in the year 2050. So India is assured of good labor supply for the next 30 years. And quantify that in just the 2017 to 27, China loses 21 million people. We add 116 million people. So 6 times the amount that China is losing, we are adding, and no other country is anywhere near us. At the same time, the cost of our labor is also very cheap because China is at a $10,000 per capita income and we are at a $2,000 per capita income. So our labor is 5 times cheaper than China. So labor supply, long-term labor supply and cost are an advantage. And thanks to our technical education, the number of engineering colleges and medical colleges and pharma colleges that we have ample supply of advanced labor or moderately skilled labor or basic skilled labor. And compared to any of our competing countries, we have enough supply of labor for this. So from that point of view, for India, the other big advantage is what the Modi government has done in terms of improvement in the licensing, removing hurdles for new business to come in, improving the infrastructure for them to transport their goods, which is all reflected in the ease of doing business rankings, where India has seen a jump of 79 ranks over the last 5 years. So for a foreign manufacturer to look at China versus India, India has done a strong improvement in the ease of doing business. This is a big positive for the country. And to support it on the financial side, we used to have one of the highest tax rates in the world. We have brought it down to 25% for our existing companies, but 17% for new companies, new manufacturing companies, which is at par with the best in the world. Singapore is very close to us. So it makes India very attractive because on top of this low tax rate, we have also waived the dividend distribution tax, which for a foreign manufacturer is a very critical component because he can repatriate his capital only in the form of dividends, and by taxing it, you're actually reducing the profitability of his project. So this was a great thing in the budget to make us financially even attractive. As a result, you see now that FDI in India has become on a rising trend. So over the last 20 years, from a single digit, we have now moved to 60 to 70 billion dollar per year of FDI inflows, and we account for 3.3% of the world's share of FDI flows. And hence, because of that, we would say that financially, we'll give a rating to our attractiveness. People skills and availability, we give a rating, and to for ease of doing business and business environment. You add up all the three, you can see that India is already among the most attractive countries globally for manufacturing to come in. And as a result of this, right, China, in addition to these structural disadvantages, COVID has made a big difference to companies which were manufacturing China who move out of China. So as you can see here, 44% of the people who are already manufacturing China say that COVID has increased their intention to relocate from China. So big, big positive. Next, when do they want to move it? That urgency has increased since December 2018. If you can see, 3 to 6 months, how many people have brought back their timeline? Originally, they were saying in 6 months I will do. Now they want to do it in 3 months. So this big change has again occurred because of COVID in terms of the urgency factor. The third factor is the quantity of production they would like to shift out of China. So as you can see, a moderate amount and a large amount is where you'll see the maximum change in the thought process in people who are making stuff in China. And finally, right, whether they're going to just pull out that factory and put it in or create new production outside China, that is also changed because they want to now set up new production facilities. As you can see there, those who are investing in new production outside mainland China is showing a sharp increase. So all of these factors make the China export likely to drop between 350 to 550 billion dollars in the next few years. So taking an average of 450 billion dollars, though India has done a lot of things to support this, Vietnam is in pole position to grab this advantage. So as you can see, we are expecting Vietnam to get 30% of the $450 billion into their country. India is a distant second at about $69 billion. But with all of these steps that are announced over the next year, we think that India can gain traction ahead of Vietnam and even become the #1 country. But lot of work ahead of us. We have done some taxation related stuff. We have done some of doing stuff. But if you see, there are 15 to 20 factors which any company looks at when they want to relocate their factories, which are all laid out in this circular graph. And the most important ones are labor cost, land cost, and reduce trade war risk. India has a good score in most of those, but there are other key factors like policy support, better infrastructure, and easy supply chain access, which we need to work on to really capture this advantage, right? So one of the places where the opportunity was there, was being grabbed and then went away, and we are now trying to get it back. I'd like to focus on to show you the seriousness and the sincerity of the government in taking advantage of this opportunity. This is in the space of electronic exports. So as you can see here, right, the electronic exports and imports, right? So components being imported here, and from India they were being exported out after being assembled here. So from 2018 September onwards, you saw the shift happen, but our exports started going up and imports started coming down because more of the manufacturing was coming to India. So clearly we had a great advantage which we were taking advantage of right from 2018. And 30% was a year-over-year growth in the exports of electronics. But then came the COVID crisis, and in March, as you can see, that line dropped dramatically. So what was going on a very good wicket suddenly got challenged. So the government then has come up with this plan, most recently, of a $6.7 billion expenditure to boost electronic manufacturing and reverse this trend due to crisis. What is this? They aim to create pre-built factory shed manufacturing clusters that a company can immediately move on to, reducing the gestation period to start manufacturing. This comes because companies in China continue to look outside to reduce their constant risk on China. What actually this does is that it gives 4% to 6% of the incremental sales they do over the next 5 years as an incentive back. That's why that's $6.7 billion expenditure. But this was a short window to fast track this. So the scheme closed on 31st July, a few days ago. What happened in that scheme? 22 companies have filed their applications. Several international brands there, Samsung, Rising Star, Apple's phone manufacturers like Foxconn, Honhai, Wistron, Decathlon. And these two companies, 37% is Apple's sale value and Samsung is 22. So 60% of the world's mobile phone sale by value is just these two. And they are shifting their production to India. So naturally, this is going to be a huge bring for India. Close to 11 lakh crore of mobile devices and components are expected to be manufactured in India in the next 5 years. About 12 lakh job opportunities, 3 lakh direct and 9 lakh indirect jobs will be created. And value addition will be anywhere from 15 to 20% to 35 to 40%, right? For mobiles and 45 to 50% for electronics. So clearly a huge win for India for the whole Make in India program. I spent a little bit of time to tell you where the specific opportunities are and how the government in fact is acting to take advantage of it and quickly move there, right? So plus the government has also been doing the Atmanirbhar project, right? Apart from some steps to boost short-term demand like the NREGA or whatever, have also done a lot of things which are important in the medium term, which are relevant to this China opportunity. What is that? These are the reforms that they've taken to ease up the supply side, right? Supply chain. Like say, what have they done? They have enabled commercial coal mining, ending the government's monopoly. They have given a boost to domestic defense production because they have allowed 76% FDI. They have privatized union territory over and significant PSU reforms where apart from some strategic sectors, they have opened up the public sector to the private. These are listed here, right? Much more detail. I'll leave it on for a minute for you to see while I just grab a bit of water. And as we move on from this, what I wanted to show you is how the government has brilliantly taken advantage of these crises to push through what I have put in apostrophe as less likely reforms. So this table splits it into four. The left-hand side is less likely, the right-hand side is more likely. And up and down is those which are high impact and those which are low impact. So that which is less likely and less impact, you don't need to worry. But the key point is that which has a high impact but was considered less likely because the opposition will oppose it, a lot of difficulties to do it. Because of this crisis, the opposition's attention is diverted to doing a lot of other things. So they have managed to push through very difficult, less likely reforms, which I've highlighted there in some form in blue. So, and in some of those in black. So this is the key, that the Atmanirbhar program actually has been a very medium-term positive because of the amount of reform it has introduced, right? As a result, right, from a longer-term growth perspective, if you want to look at how the top 10 world's biggest economies, how that has changed in 1992, 2008, 24, 16-year periods, because for you to take a big shift. So 1992, US was number 1, China was number 10, India was nowhere. 2008, US remained number 1, but China leapfrogged from number 10 to number 3. What's going to happen from 2008 to 24, we are 3/4 of the way through, is that China is going to overtake everybody and become the number 1 largest economy in the world. US will drop to 2, but the surprise package is India, which is not in the top 10 in either 92 or in 2008, is going to do the biggest chalan and land at number 3. So we are all geared by the time the next election is due for India to be the 3rd largest economy in the world. So that's the big medium-term positive for a foreigner looking at India.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.